All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony McCollum, and I'm the Client Success Specialist here at Mobilesmith. Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays, where every other Wednesday we present to you a webinar that goes over best practices when creating, building, and publishing apps through the Mobilesmith platform. The previous webinar, we covered REST and how to implement that in our platform. If you missed that, as well as any other webinars, please visit our Mobilesmith YouTube page where you can watch any of our previous webinars. Today, we're starting a three-part series all about app submission. Today is part one, creating account-level assets, and I have here with me Tony Orsa, our UI and product specialist, and he'll be leading the way here on this webinar. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Anthony, and welcome to this week's webinar. Again, like Anthony said, we'll be going over creating account-level assets for public and private distribution of your app. So just to give you a brief overview of the difference between public store and enterprise or private distribution is public store is the building your app to submit to Google Play and the Apple App Store. So you'll be setting up or needing a Apple developer account. And so in this week's webinar, we'll assume that you already have your developer accounts both for Apple and Google. And the first thing you're going to want to do is have those accounts ready and go over the documentation we have on our support center. And then also following this webinar, I'll help you kind of set those initial assets up. So again, the main difference between the public store and private distribution is that the public store distribution will be going into Apple and Google's App Store. Private means that you have the ability to create your own App Store or landing page for a specific set of users to download your app. So with that being said, we can go ahead and jump right into starting to build out your account level assets needed for the Mobilesmith platform. So the first thing I'll be showing you is creating a key store file for Android. I'm using a Mac. For this part, you can use a PC, but I'm using a Mac here. So for all your Mac users, if you come to the top right corner of the magnifying glass, you'll click that and type in terminal. So it's going to give you a list of there we go. So we're going to click on a terminal application and give it a second to load up. Seems like we have some try it again. There we go. Okay. So we'll open up terminal. Again, I'm using a Mac. You can use a PC for this. But when I'm doing this, I always like to reference our documentation, which can be found on our support center. So in this step, we'll be needing to enter in a little bit of code in order to generate a key store file. So I will go down to the documentation and find that little bit of code that we need. And in the documentation, it explains all of this as well. But I always like to reference this little bit of code here needed to generate the key store file. So I'll go ahead and follow along and generate the key store file. So once I've entered that in, I'm going to tap enter or return. And so, let's see here. May have entered in something wrong here. Let's try that one more time. Here we go. Okay, so once you've entered that in correctly, it's going to prompt you to answer some questions. The first being assigning it a password. So I'll go ahead and assign a password. It's going to ask you to enter it one more time. Then it's going to ask you a few other questions to associate this key store file for. So I'll go ahead and enter that in. Organizational unit can usually, most times it's development. Name of the organization, what city, what state, U.S. And then if everything is correct, you can type yes. And then for the actual Android alias password, we'll just hit return, so it'll assign it the same password we used, we entered in before. And then that's it. Generating the key store file is an essential part of being able to build out your app for Android, whether or not you're using it in the public store or privately. You need to do this. So if you're on a Mac, you can find the file if you open up a Finder window and go to Downloads. And I always like to just search for .keystore, and it should show up. Sort it by date modified. You'll see that my keystore file is generated in my Downloads folder. So I could take that. Again, this would be needed for the MobileSmith platform. You would need to email this file to us and the password because you do not have access to enter it in yourself in the MobileSmith platform. So once you have that generated and the password notated, you would need to send that to us. And as far as account level assets for Android, that is all you need to do. So I can enter or exit out of that. And the next thing we can do is start building our assets for Apple. Again, this is assuming that you already have your developer account. So I'll go ahead and open a browser window and log into my developer account. And didn't like the password. So let's try that again. Okay. So we're here, we're an Apple developer. We want to create a global distribution certificate, and that allows you to submit apps to the stores, in short. So what I'll do here is first go to identifiers in iOS apps. This is your main Apple developer dashboard. 3 main sections for app, and the 3 main sections you'll want to remember and be in is app IDs, certificates, and then provisioning profiles. So the first thing we'll do is create an app ID. So by doing this, we'll click the plus button. And Apple's going to ask us for a name of the app. So for test purposes, I'll just call it test app. I'll assign it a bundle ID, and Apple gives you an example here. So I'll follow along the example. I'll just do this. And then we want to enable the app to have push notifications. So we'll check that and continue. It's going to ask you to review what you just created and hit submit. So once that's done, we can go ahead to certificates. And since MobileSmith already has one, I'm not going to go through the entire step of creating your iOS distribution certificate, but I'll get you as far as the last step. So the main thing you want to remember is that having multiple of these can get confusing. So really you want to try to just have one in your account at all times and to renew it once a year. So we'll go to certificates, and again, we're creating the global distribution, which allows you to submit apps to the store. So we'll be in the certificate section and click plus to add a new one. And then to add a new one, we want to assign our apps for submission to the Check in Production App Store and Ad Hoc. And hit continue. This part does require a Mac. I failed to mention that before, but this part does require Mac to be able to build out your distribution certificate. So the next step would be to, if you haven't already, usually if you have a Mac, you have a CSR file. So you'll need to either locate that, or if you can't find it, you can create a new one, which I'll show you how to do that as well. So we can actually just go and move over to that step and create a certificate signing request. So I'm going to open up the Keychain Access program, and again, you can find that program the top right-hand corner with the magnifying icon and open up the program. So this is the Keychain Access program. This is where you assign a password and export your certificates as P12 files, which will be needed for the MobileSmith platform. Also, you're able to generate a new certificate signing request that allows you to export these certificates that we need. So again, if you don't have one, you can create one here. I always like to refer back to my documentation again. Let me see if I can find it. So we have a little section here that helps you or gives you some walkthrough steps of creating one. So we've opened our Keychain Access program, and we'll want to do, we'll want to click on Keychain Access, and then Certificate Assistance, and then request a certificate from a certificate authority. So if we don't have a CSR file, this is how we'll create one. So once you enter in an email, your name, and this is optional, or this is actually required, and also this probably use the same email address. We're going to want to save it to disk and hit continue. and then it'll generate in your downloads folder again. So that's how you create a CSR file if you did not have one. Jumping back to developer, we will get back to creating our global cert. The next step would be to assign or to upload your CSR file. So hit continue, and then we'll choose the file. And we'll hit generate. And that is how you generate a global cert. From here, you need to download it. And once you download it, you'll want to click on this file and open up. It'll open up in Keychain Access. So from here, we'll want to export this certificate that we just downloaded and opened by expanding it and highlighting both and export to items. From here, we'll want to choose a place to save it. I always like to name my global distribution certificates appropriately so I know the difference. And then hit save. And it's going to prompt you to put in a password. And so this P12 file that we're exporting and this password is what we will need for the MobileSmith platform for your account level assets. So I would make sure that you remember your password and remember where you save this exported P12 file. So moving on to enterprise and private distribution. The same process applies for the enterprise side of it. You'll need a few additional things to be able to build out enterprise apps in your account in the MobileSmith platform. You can find a list of that stuff in our documentation. Let's see here. So page 4. Sign in. Okay. So this begins the enterprise, the Apple Enterprise program. Building out your distribution certificate will be the same, but you do need a couple of additional assets to be able to build enterprise, one of which would be a test provisioning profile and a test bundle ID. So using this documentation, you'll be able to create the rest of those things. The main thing to remember here is that this is for your account. It's not app specific. So when you're ready to publish your app, whether it's public or enterprise, these assets will need to be created and handed over to MobileSmith so we can enter it in. So with that being said, I'll open up the webinar for questions.
So, Tony, you said that you have to do this on a Mac. Is there any workaround at all if somebody does not have a Mac?
There is not.
Okay.
All of the credentials that you'll need for Apple will need to be created on a Mac. The Android key store file you can create on PC.
Okay.
or a Mac.
And then if they do not have a Mac, is it something that we can assist them with?
Yes. So a lot of times with these account level assets, we like to assist or really, in fact, just create ourselves. But we do have instances where clients have the Mac, and we walk them through how to create these credentials. But at the end of the day, whether we do it or you decide to do it, you'll need to hand over those files and passwords so that we can enter it in, because you do not have access to that section of the MobileSmith platform.
And so if we are able to assist them with doing this, what information do we need from them to create it on their behalf?
All we need to be able to create these assets would be the login credentials for Apple. Again, Android or Google developer is not tied to being able to create a key store file. So at this stage, we wouldn't need your Google login, but for Apple developer, we would need the login, and that's it. For both Apple public and enterprise, if you have an enterprise account. I can also show you on our support center where to find the documentation that I was referring to. So if you search global assets, you should be able to find it. That's a different article. Where do we put it? Apps probably. So, nope. There we go. Global account setup. Sorry about that. So if you go to our knowledge base, you can find it by searching global accounts. And again, this will give you a little rundown on the different accounts and what they do and how much they cost. If you don't have the accounts yet, and then you could download the PDF that I was using for reference. Again, that is literally a step-by-step walk through how to set all this up. Any other questions?
No other questions are coming in right now. So this, you said, was part one of the three-step process. What we'll be covering in the next webinar?
Yeah, so on December 2nd, part 2 of app submission will be covering, creating app project level assets. So this is the assets that you'll be placing into the platform, and that will be covered again on December 2nd.
All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. Thanks for everybody for joining and participating. Look forward to our next 2 weeks. Was it December 2nd of part 2 of app submission. Thanks and have a good day.